This video will show you how to interpret dummy variables in a regression model. If you want to follow along, open up the training data codebook and the training data set that are located in the databases, datasets and codebooks tab of Blackboard. This is kind of a limited data set, but just to show you how to interpret dummy variables, I've kept it very small. Our dependent variable that we're going to be interested in is fire department response time, and whether or not the presence of a chief, a supervisor at the station, affects response time, along with whether or not training decreases response time. Training focused on decreasing turnout and response times. We'll see if that training worked. Ideally, we'd have a bunch of other different independent variables, and the full data set does have this, but since this is just a tutorial on how to interpret these dummy variables, we'll just work with what we have. So once you have the code book and data set open, remember we'll be running a dependent variable on response time. It's from 0 to infinity, so it is interval level, and so regression is appropriate. The chief station variable is coded 1 if a chief is at the fire station, 0 if not. And training completed variable is coded 1 if the unit finished the training, and if the unit had not, and 0 if the unit had not undergone it. So those are two dummy variables, and they can be used as independent variables. So we've got the data set uploaded. To run the regression, we go Analyze, Regression, Linear. We want our response time to be the dependent variable. And our independent variables, we said chief station and training completed. They're coded 1 and 0 each. Remember, 1 for chief station means that the chief is there, or a battalion chief is there, so essentially a supervisor's there. 0 if there's no chief stationed at the fire station. And training completed is coded 1 if the unit responding to the emergency had been trained. 0 if they had not. And you hit OK. You see that we're adjusted our squared is very small, 0.5, 0.005 or 0.5% of the variation in response time can be explained by whether or not a chief's at the station and training was completed or not. So there are many other factors that will affect response time. If we were to just look at the coefficients and just interpret them for what they are, you see under chief station, it's a negative 21.685. Remember, this dummy variable is coded 1 if there was a chief there, 0 if not. So the interpretation would be, on average, ceteris paribus, having a 1 or having a chief at the station leads to a 21.685 unit decrease in response times. The units of response times are measured in seconds, so on average, ceteris paribus, having a chief at the station leads to a 21.685 second decrease in response times. It's significant at above the 99% level. The training, did the training work? Well, in this very, very limited model, we would say yes, the coefficient's significant. And the interpretation would be, on average, ceteris paribus, having that 1 on that variable of training completed, or on average, ceteris paribus, 1 being the training was completed, you would say on average, ceteris paribus, units that had undergone the training had a 12.82 unit decrease in response times, or a 12.82 second decrease on response times. So the training variable training modules seem to have decreased total response times by 12.82 seconds. Essentially, those units that had already undergone the training, their response times were on average 12.82 seconds shorter than those units that had not undergone the training. So the training appears to have worked to have decreased response times by about 12.82 seconds.